Shalom, everyone, and welcome to our Shabbat night lesson, lesson 14, Vaeda. We are excited about our lesson on tonight, and we are excited that um, everyone is going to get an opportunity to come on and join with us in our lesson on tonight. So let us uh, again, I want to thank you all. I see my sister has joined us and my brother has joined us. And I think our prophetess has joined us, prophetess Linda. So I want to welcome you to our lesson on tonight. We are excited about our lesson. I mean, this stuff it gets more and more informative, and the light begins to come on as we began to see where we left off last time was chapter 6, verse 1, where Jehovah says to Moses, now you are going to see what I will do. And of course, Moses is still not sure. So he's going to receive a rebuke because Jehovah is going to repeat his name one more time. And throughout this lesson, there must be at least 25 to 50 times where the name Jehovah will be spoken during this particular lesson. And so we see that both Pharaoh and Moses are learning about the creator of the universe that we say is Jehovah. And so thank you so much for joining me. We are going to try to get started because we have so much to cover. And wow, we're going to get into the first 7 plagues. We know that there are 10. We're going to go over 7 of them tonight. And then we will pick up next week on the final 3. And I want you to kind of, we always like to think in terms of time. Well, it is estimated because of something that's going to be mentioned tonight in terms of when the hail came down, it destroyed the barley crop, right? Well, we also understand that the children of Israel are going to leave Egypt right at the time of Passover, which is around the time of the barley harvest. And so it gives us an idea that these plagues probably went on for a year. So it wasn't like one after another, after another, after another. The mercy and grace of the Creator was exhibited throughout all of these plagues so that the land would have a time to heal before the next one came, because he said he's going to show all of his wonders. So all of the various deities of Egypt will be, and when I say deities of Egypt, the Egyptian system has one creator, Elohim, one God. But there are many lesser God, or sometimes we say angels, that were over different aspects of what we call nature. So we're going to see that this attack even the first one is going to be just awesome. So let's pray and then get into our lesson for tonight. Jehovah our Elohim, we bless you for this day. This is the day that you have made. We rejoice. We are glad in it. We thank you for this opportunity to study your word together, studying to show ourselves approved, workmen not ashamed of our hire, rightly dividing the words of truth. Thank you for the Ruach HaKodesh, your Holy Spirit, that comes to guide us into all truth. And it's in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, our Lord, Savior, and King, that we pray this prayer. Amen. All right, with that, we're going to get into our shared screen. and begin our lesson for tonight. All right, so let me move you guys up a little bit out of the way. And now I won't see you. Okay, so we're going to get into our slideshow presentation and go. All right, so this is our Shabbat night lesson 14. In Hebrew, it is Vayera. Vayera is from Exodus 6 and 2 to 9, chapter 9, verse 35. This is January 31st, 2025. Lesson 14 of 52 lessons that's going to get us through the first 5 books of the Bible in 1 year. And we want to always remember that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds forth from the mouth of the Creator. And we understand that the word was spoken to Moses and told to write down these things. And so we consider the Torah as the spoken word of Jehovah, Yeshua in word form, speaking to Moses and telling him to write this down for man, not just the children of Israel, but for all men. And so with that, we're going to get into our lesson. Remember that what had just transpired is Moses went to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said, I don't know nothing about nobody named Jehovah. I don't know who you think you messing with, but get out my face. Then made the children of Israel, the ones that were working, had to work without straw, had to still make the same number of bricks. And so all of this was going on. And Jehovah tells Moses, now you go back. So with that, we're going to get into our lesson and pick it up at chapter 6, verse 2. Elohim spoke to Moshe. He said to him, I am Jehovah. Now remember, Moses just said, why did you do this to this people? You told me to go and tell Pharaoh. Pharaoh done kicked me out and then made the work on the people twice as hard. And the people are now upset with me. So how does the creator of the universe respond? He says to him, I am Jehovah. Remember what the name is all about. I am. Iye, aye, iye. I am, I will be, and I always am. And so we see then that Jehovah is reminding Moses, kind of a rebuke to him of who he is. So this question of Moses got him a rebuke. He said, I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov as El Shaddai, which means basically almighty. But the whole concept of El Shaddai can also mean like God of the mountain, but it means almighty. So he showed himself as almighty, but now he's getting ready to fulfill the promise that was made to Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. He's getting ready to do that now. And so he's giving him Yud Vav, or the name Jehovah, which brings all of those attributes into focus. And he says, this is my name forever. He goes on in verse 4 and says, also with them I established my covenant to give them the land of Canaan, the land where they wandered about and lived as foreigners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the people of Israel, whom the Egyptians are keeping in slavery, and I have remembered my covenant. All this basically means is, I am getting ready to deliver. Verse 6, therefore say to the people of Israel, I am Jehovah. So he's reminding him, you go back and tell the people of Israel who I am. I will free you. He's getting into the I wills now of what Jehovah is going to do. And when you celebrate a Passover Seder or festival or celebration, then 4 of these are mentioned during the Passover Seder. He says, I will free you from the forced labor of the Egyptians. I will rescue you from their oppression, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arms and with great judgments. He says, I will take you as my people, and I will be your Elohim. Then you will know that I am Jehovah, your Elohim, who freed you from the forced labor of the Egyptians. So these are the I will statements. There's basically like 7 of them, even though my particular translation doesn't give all 7, but the main ones is he's going to free them, he's going to rescue them, he's going to take them as his people, and he's going to be their God. And so these things are what Jehovah tells Moshe, you go back and tell the people, right? He says, and then what? Number 8, I will bring you into the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will give it to you as your inheritance. And once again, he repeats his name, because this name is not only all powerful, but this name is the name that is going to actually do what was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So this is the God, Jehovah, that is going to do that. Verse 9, Moshe said this to the people of Israel, but they wouldn't listen to him because they were so discouraged and their slavery was so cruel. Verse 10, Jehovah said to Moshe, see how many times this name is showing up? Go in, verse 11, and tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the people of Israel leave his land. Moshe said to Jehovah, look, the people of Israel haven't listened to me, so how will Pharaoh listen to me? Poor speaker that I am. Once again, he speaks about the fact that he is a poor speaker. But if you look in the book of Acts, chapter 7, verse 22, where I think it was Stephen is giving his dissertation to the leaders of the people, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, before the Sanhedrin, before his death, he said that Moses was familiar in all of the wisdom and knowledge of Egypt and became a great speaker. So during this process, Moshe, who may have had an impediment, will no longer have it. And he says that it was 40 years, which we will see in our scriptures, that Moses was 40 years old when he left to run for his life from Pharaoh. So Stephen points these things out and had been taught to the people of Israel all the time, from the time of the children of Israel going into the land by Moses until the time of Stephen, which was after the time of Yeshua or Jesus. But verse 13, Jehovah spoke to Moshe and Aaron and gave them orders. So now he's commanding them concerning both the people of Israel and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt. So now we're not going to talk no more, Moses. You and Aaron go and do what I told you to do. And with that, we're going to begin our verse 14, which starts our second session. So in the first section, we see how Moses was basically reprimanded by God, how by Elohim, and how he was continually speaking his name before Moshe to remind him of who he is, that he is going to do what he said he's going to do. And even though the patriarchs knew all of his strength, they didn't see the land and go into it. But these people will see and go into the land. Then it breaks off a little bit and it says, these were the heads of their families, the sons of Reuben. The firstborn of Israel were Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. These were the families of Reuben. The sons of Simeon or Shimon were Yamuel, Yamin, Ohad, Yakin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. These were the families of Shimon. So basically, it's going back and explaining to us who Moses was and giving us some vital points of information. Goes on, verse 16. Those are the first two sons, Reuben and Shimon or Simeon. The third son, Levi, and their descendants were Gershon, Kahat, and Merari. Levi lived to be 137 years old. So Levi lived 137 years, and many of those years, because he would be within 20 years of Yosef. And so Levi, because all of the kids were born within basically like a 14-year period in the land of Haran. And so Levi lived to be 137 years, and then he's the head of who we will later know as the Levites. Then the sons of Kahat were Amram, Yithar, Hebron, and Uziel. Kahat lived to be 133 years old. So now we got a period of somewhere around 200 years already. The sons of Merari were Mahali, and Mushi. These were the families of Levi with their descendants. Amram married Yocheved, his father's sister, and she bore him Aharon and Moshe. So Amram then is the mother. I'm sorry, Yocheved is the mother of Moses and Aaron. Aaron, of course, being the oldest, 3 years older than Moshe. Amram lived to be 137 years. So now we're about close to 330 something years. The sons of Yisar were Korah. We're going to see that name as part of a rebellion, Nepheg and Zikri. So we remember now that Korah is a cousin of Moses and Aaron. And so in the second session, we are now going into the completion of it, verses 22 through 28. The sons of Uziel were Mishael, Ezaphan, and Sitri. Aharon married Elisheba, daughter of Aminadab and sister of Nachshon. And she bore him Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Itamar. We will see the four sons of Aharon mentioned throughout Exodus until they made their mistake. The sons of Korah were Asir, Elkanah, and Aviasa. These were the Korahite families, or the Levites, and the Korahites were one of the sons of Levi. Eleazar, the son of Aharon, married one of the daughters of Putiel. We highlighted that because Putiel is actually the same as Jethro. So one of the daughters of Jethro, remember he had 7, Moses married one, and Eleazar, his nephew, married one of the 7 daughters of Jethro, and she bore him Pinchas. These were the heads of the families of Levi, family by family. These are the Aharon and Moshe to whom Jehovah said, bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt, division by division, which basically is going to mean they're going to march out under each of the 12 tribes of the sons of Yaakov, and who told Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the people of Israel leave Egypt. So there's no big mystery about who these two people were. We've gone into their lineage. We know how they came in. Their ancestors came into the land through Yaakov and his sons. And so there was nothing great about them, but they had a purpose. And Jehovah is using them to bring about his desired end. And each of us should understand ourselves in that way, that we are part of those who have a particular function to carry forth on this earth. On the day when Jehovah spoke to Moshe in the land of Egypt. So he speaks to them, now you're going in there and do. He's commanding them, go in and do what I told you. Let's go into the third session, and then we'll break for a second and see if there were any questions. He said to them, I am Jehovah. Once again, we see the name. Tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, everything I say to you. Moshe answered Jehovah, look, I am such a poor speaker that Pharaoh won't listen to me. So this is repeated because of that break that we had to go into the lineage of Moshe and Aaron. And so, as we get ready to complete our third session, but Jehovah said to Moshe, I have put you in the place of Elohim to Pharaoh, and Aaron, your brother, will be your prophet. Now, because he keeps talking about he can't speak, or he's afraid he's going to stutter, and fear can do that to you. He said, you ought to say everything I order you. And Aaron, your brother, is to speak to Pharaoh and tell him to let the people of Israel leave his land. But I will make him hard-hearted, even though I will increase my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. Pharaoh will not listen to you. So you're going to see where sometimes it says, I'm going to make him hard-hearted. In other words, Jehovah is going to back away. And then other times it will say, Pharaoh will make himself hard-hearted. So in any case, it is not Jehovah causing Pharaoh to sin. This is what Pharaoh wants to do anyway, and he's already said that. He already said, I don't know, and I'm not letting you go. I don't know no Jehovah, and I'm not going to let you go. Verse 4, he says, Pharaoh will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring my armies, my people, the sons of Israel, out of the land of Egypt with great acts of judgment. Then, when I stretch out my hand over Egypt and bring the people of Israel out from among them, the Egyptians will know that I am Jehovah. So now, Jehovah. For the Egyptians, this is for all of us. This is for those of us in this day and time, because this information. O-V-A. And so we are taking this information in as well, because we're seeing how merciful Jehovah is in stretching it out to a year, and how merciful he is in warning and giving Pharaoh an opportunity to what? Do what he was told, even though he says he won't do it. Verse 6, Moshe and Aaron did exactly what Jehovah ordered them to do. Moshe was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. So remember, we know he was 40 years old when he had the incident with the Egyptian and had to run for his life. And now he's 80 years old. So a 40-year period has passed. And we talked about that last week. This is one of the reasons why he was still afraid to go back, is because it had only been 40 years. And if you were one of the most wanted or something like that, then you ain't sure Pharaoh died in that 40-year period of time. I mean, you don't want to go back, even though Jehovah told him that. In his mind, 40 years ain't no long time. This could be a problem. And so with that, we're going to get into our fourth session. So let's see if we have any questions. Yes, we got 3. So let's see what they are. NLT says 130 years. Is that incorrect? New King James, and remember we said 133, 137, and then there was one other period of time. So maybe you're looking at it differently than what I just said, because there's 133, 137, and then there was a number of years for Levi as well. And so it was levied. Let me go back. Let's go back and look at that. And we'll see there were 3 different times listed in my translation. Oh, talking about Amron. Okay. So basically, one said it was 137, one said 133. Well, I can't say that the NLT is wrong and my translation is exactly right because it's not Hebrew. So in one of the translations, it could have been an error. Next one says, oh, tell Linda to mute. Okay. Mute, Linda. We're getting some feedback. And okay. So Linda, you have to mute yourself until you are ready to speak. All right. With that, let's get back into our lesson. And we're getting back to our 4th session. So now we are in chapter 8. No, we're still in chapter 7, verse 8, all the way till we get to chapter 8, verse 6. Verse 8 of chapter 7, Jehovah said to once again, you're going to see that name throughout all of this lesson, continually saying that name because it's important for them to understand and walk in what Jehovah has said. Jehovah said to Moshe and Aaron, when Pharaoh says to you, perform a miracle, tell Aaron to take his staff and throw it down in front of Pharaoh so that it can become a snake. Moshe and Aaron went into Pharaoh and did this as Jehovah had ordered. Aaron threw down his staff in front of Pharaoh and his servants, and it turned into a snake. But Pharaoh in turn called for the sages and sorcerers, and they too, the magicians of Egypt, did the same thing, making use of their secret arts. Each one threw his staff down, and they turned into snakes. But Aaron's staff swallowed up theirs. So they're able to do the same thing. That's no big thing, Pharaoh said, brings his boys out, show them what we can do that. But Aaron swallows up theirs. So in other words, my power is greater than these things that you're able to do. Nevertheless, Pharaoh was made hard-hearted and he didn't listen to them, as Jehovah had said would happen. So once again, the hardness of his heart, his people could do that. No big deal. Get out of here. Jehovah said to Moshe, Pharaoh is stubborn. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning. We're going to see this a great deal where he tells him, get up in the morning and go. Remember, it's going to be this whole process is going to take about a year because it's going to be Passover is going to be once again when the barley has just broken through. Go to Pharaoh early in the morning when he goes out to the water. Stand on the riverbank to confront him, take in your hand the staff which was turned into a snake, and say to him, Jehovah, the Elohim of the Hebrews, sent me to you to say, let my people go so that they can worship me in the desert. Now, in many of the studies of Egyptian history and what was going on at this time, basically have said that one of the things they were allowed to do to people, the different ethnicities that would come into the land, would be they could do their own worship of their particular deities, but of course they were also going to bow down to the Egyptian deities as well. So this request is not crazy, but Pharaoh is not allowing it. Moshe said, but until now you haven't listened. So Jehovah says, This will let you know that I am Jehovah. I will take my staff in my hand and strike the water in the river, and it will be turned into blood. Interesting that he's going to turn the water into blood. So this source of life, we know that the life of man is in the blood. But this source of life is now, blood is going to become a source of death, because what was Pharaoh doing? Taking male babies and throwing them in the river. And so the water of life becomes death. Verse 18, the fish in the river will die. The river will stink, and the Egyptians won't want to drink water from the river. We go on. Jehovah said to Moshe, say to Aaron, take your staff, reach out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their rivers, canals, ponds, and all their reservoirs, so that they can turn into blood. There will be blood throughout the whole land of Egypt, even in the wooden buckets and stone jars. That's amazing. So even if they go and try to get something, it's going to be blood. And even if they have some that they just got, it's going to turn into blood. Moshe and Aaron did exactly what Jehovah had ordered. He raised the staff, and in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, struck the water in the river, and all the water in the river was turned into blood. The fish in the river died, and the river stank so badly that the Egyptians couldn't drink its water. There was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. But the magicians of Egypt did the same with their secret arts. In other words, they had a way of turning the water into a red color. So they were able to do that, which Jehovah allowed. And why? Because Pharaoh was made hard-hearted and didn't listen to them, as Jehovah had said would happen. Pharaoh just turned and went back into his palace without taking any of this to heart. All the Egyptians dug around the river for water to drink, because they couldn't drink the river water. So they were looking for wells to bring forth water. Then we go into something very interesting in verse 25, is 7 days. So Jehovah gave it time for purification, because the Nile overflowed its banks and the water went from Egypt all the way out to the Mediterranean Sea. And so in this period of time, the Mediterranean is salt water. And so in this period of time, the water gets a chance to flow out and kind of cleanse itself, so that it would not what? Destroy all of the people of Egypt. Jehovah said to Moshe, go into Pharaoh and say to him, here's what Jehovah said. Now this is 7 days later. Let my people go so they can worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will strike all your territory with frogs. And we complete the 4th session. The river will swarm with frogs. They will go up into your palace and go into your bedrooms and onto your bed. They will enter the houses of your servants and your people and go into your ovens and kneading bowls. The frogs will climb all over you, your people and your servants. Now the frogs were considered the frogs were considered kind of like a fertility deity. And so this is why this was happening to the frogs and populating in this manner. Aaron put out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. But the magicians did the same with their secret arts and brought up frogs onto the land of Egypt. Then, but not like this. Then Pharaoh summoned Moshe and Aaron and said, intercede with Jehovah. So now he's saying his name. He didn't just say intercede with Elohim. He says, no, intercede with Jehovah to take the frogs away from me and my people. And I will let the people go and sacrifice to Jehovah. So he said the name twice. So we see Pharaoh now saying, I need some help with this one. Moshe said to Pharaoh, not only that, but you can have the honor of naming the time when I will pray for you. So now we understand where it says that you will be like a what? A Elohim to Pharaoh. So now I'm going to let you say it, and I'm going to see that happens. He says, your servants and your people to be rid of the frogs, both yourselves and your homes, and that they stay only in the river. He answered, tomorrow. So Pharaoh said, tomorrow. Now he could all these frogs, you could have said, no. He said, tomorrow. And we're going to see this play out throughout this whole lesson of Vayera. Moshe said, it will be as you have said. And from this you will learn that Jehovah, our Elohim, has no equal. So we complete our fourth session, and we're going to see, once again, you see Jehovah throughout, that name continually coming up, and even Pharaoh now is using the name of Jehovah, going on and speaking that name to say, tell him to get these things out of here. And then he says, tomorrow. So with that, we're going to complete our fourth session, and get into our fifth session, which is Exodus chapter 8, verses 7 through 18. And it's going to be one slide, and we're going to see the third and the fourth plague in this particular session. He says, the frogs will leave you in your homes, also your servants and your people, and they will stay in the river. So all the frogs didn't die, but the ones that had come upon land, they are going to die. Moshe and Aaron left Pharaoh's presence, and Moshe cried to Jehovah about the frogs he had brought on Pharaoh. Jehovah did as Moshe had asked. The frogs died in the houses, courtyards, and the fields. They gathered in them in heaps till the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that he had been given some relief, he made himself hard-hearted. So Pharaoh's intent all along was, nobody's going to tell me what to do. And in many instances, we find ourselves and those that are around us being hard-hearted, where they could see different things transpire. They could see hurricanes, they could see tornadoes, they could see all these things. And yet and still, no connection is made with the creator of the universe. It's called nature doing what nature does. But the children of God should know better and would not listen to them, just as Pharaoh had said would happen. So once again, he himself has determined, I am not going to let them go. Verse 12, Jehovah said to Moshe, say to Aaron, reach out with your staff and strike the dust on the ground. It will become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. They did it. Aaron reached out his hand and his staff and struck the dust on the ground. And there were lice on people and animals. All the dust on the ground became lice throughout the whole land of Egypt. The magicians tried with their secret arts to produce lice, but they couldn't. There were lice on people and animals. Then the magician said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of Elohim. Well, basically, that's a Hebrew idiom where in Hebrew it would say, this is an indication of the power of this Elohim or this God. But Pharaoh was made hard-hearted so that he didn't listen to them, just as Jehovah had said would happen. Jehovah said to Moshe, this is another time, get up early in the morning, stand before Pharaoh when he goes out to the water, and say to him, here is what Jehovah says, let my people go so that they can worship me. Otherwise, if you won't let my people go, I will send swarms of insects on you and your servants and your people and into your houses. The houses of the Egyptians will be full of swarms of insects, and likewise the ground they stand on. But I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people live. No swarms of insects will be there, so that you can realize that I am Jehovah right here in the land. So now you're getting an opportunity to respect this Elohim with the name Jehovah, and you're going to see now that I'm separating. What's been happening is not going to affect my people at all. So the people in the land of Goshen will have nothing else that transpires will happen to them, so that you will realize that they are mine. When I say let my people go, I'm showing you they belong to me. I protect them. I watch over them, and I'm telling you to let them go. So now we're seeing that the magicians say, wait a minute, Pharaoh, this power is greater than anything we've ever seen. But Pharaoh says, I'm not hearing it. We're going to go to the sixth session. He says, yes, Jehovah says, I will distinguish between my people and your people, and this sign will happen by when? Tomorrow. So what Pharaoh has spoken about tomorrow, Jehovah says, this will happen. Jehovah did it. Terrible swarms of insects went into Pharaoh's palace and into all his servants' houses. The insects ruined the entire land of Egypt. Pharaoh summoned Moshe and Aaron and said, go and sacrifice to your Elohim here in the land. So now he's saying, hey man, you go ahead, but just do it here. Go on and sacrifice. We let y'all do that. But Moshe replied, it would be inappropriate for us to do that, because the animal we sacrifice to Jehovah, our Elohim, is an abomination to the Egyptians. Egyptians did not like sheep. And so even when Joseph told his brothers to come in there, he said, look, tell them you herd animals, but don't just mention sheep, because they don't like sheep. So Moshe says, won't the Egyptians stone us to death if before their very eyes we sacrifice what they consider an abomination? No, we will go 3 days' journey into the desert and sacrifice to Jehovah our Elohim, as he has ordered us to do. Pharaoh said, I will let you go so that you can sacrifice to Jehovah your Elohim in the desert. Only you are not to go very far away. Intercede on my behalf. So he said, let's get these insects out of here. All right, I'm going away from you, and I will intercede with Jehovah so that tomorrow, as that word, tomorrow, the swarms of insects will leave Pharaoh, his servants, and his people. Just make sure that Pharaoh stops playing games with the people by preventing them from going and sacrificing to Jehovah. Moshe left Pharaoh and interceded with Jehovah. And Jehovah did what Moshe had asked. He removed the swarms of insects from Pharaoh, his servants, and his people. Not one remained. But this time too, Pharaoh made himself hard-hearted, and didn't let the people go. So this interchange of wording continually points out that this is what Pharaoh had set his mind to do. And Jehovah honors our will. Second part of the sixth session, and then we'll check for questions. Then Jehovah said to Moshe, go to Pharaoh and tell him, here is what Jehovah, the Elohim of the Hebrews, says. Let my people go so that they can worship me. If you refuse to let them go and persist in holding on to them, the hand of Jehovah is on your livestock in the field. Once again, this is an idiom meaning basically the power of Jehovah is going to descend upon your livestock, on the horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, and flocks, and will make them suffer a devastating illness. But Jehovah will distinguish between Egypt's and Israel's livestock. Nothing belonging to the people of Israel will die. Verse 5, Jehovah determined the exact time by saying, tomorrow Jehovah will do this in the land. So once again, see, there's a time for repentance. There's a time to say, hold on, y'all go ahead and do whatever you want to do. That's the mercy and grace of Jehovah. But Pharaoh is set to do what he said. So he's been given time. The following day, Jehovah did it. All the livestock of Egypt died. Now, that all, we have to be careful with that, because in that translation, it's not every animal, but many died, but not all of the animals, because later on, he's going to tell them to take the animals inside. So basically, this is kind of talking about those animals up there that we just listed, and all of them did not die. The following day, as we go on verse 7, Pharaoh investigated. Now he checked it out and found that not even one of the animals of the people of Israel had died. Nevertheless, Pharaoh's heart remained stubborn, and he didn't let the people go. Jehovah said to Moshe and Aaron, take handful of ashes from a kiln, or basically an oven, and let Moshe throw them in the air before Pharaoh's eyes. And we get into our 7th session. So they took soot and stuff from the furnace and went to where Pharaoh was and threw it heavenward. The soot descended and will cover. Since you are still setting yourself up against, listen to what Jehovah tells them. Since you are still setting yourself against my people and not letting them go tomorrow about this time, he says, now that soot brought what? Boils and all kind of things and sickness upon the animals. Now he says, I'm going to cause a hailstorm so heavy that Egypt has had nothing like it from the day it was founded until that particular point in time. So nowhere in the history of Egypt had there ever been a hailstorm like the one that is going to come upon them. Then he says, therefore, send and hurry to bring indoors, so the mercy of Jehovah, your livestock, and everything else you have in the field. For hail will fall on every human being and animal in the field that hasn't been brought home, and they will die. Whoever among Pharaoh's servants feared what Jehovah had said had his slaves and livestock come into the houses. But those who had no regard for what Jehovah had said left their slaves and livestock in the field. Jehovah said to Moshe, so now he's giving everyone an opportunity in Egypt to obey, and says, take them inside. Now you've had all these other plagues come before you. 5, 6 other plagues, and now the 7th one is getting ready to come. And you still aren't doing what you were told to do. Verse 22, Jehovah said to Moshe, reach out your hand toward the sky so that there will be hail in all the land of Egypt, falling on people, animals, and everything growing in the field throughout the land of Egypt. Moshe reached out his staff toward the sky, and Jehovah sent thunder and hail, and fire ran down to the earth. Jehovah caused it to hail on the land of Egypt. It hailed, and fire flashed up with the hail. It was terrible, worse than any hailstorm in all of Egypt since it became a nation. Throughout all the land of Egypt, the hail struck everything in the field, people and animals, and the hail struck every plant growing in the field and broke every tree there. But in the land of Goshen, where the people of Israel were, there was no hail. As we complete our lesson, Pharaoh summoned Moshe and Aharon and said to them, "This time I have sinned, violated the very words and commands of Jehovah." He says Jehovah is in the right. Jehovah, not God. Jehovah is in the right. I and my people are in the wrong. Intercede with Jehovah. We can't take any more of this terrible thunder and hail, and I will let you go. You will stay no longer. Now, in Hebrew, as they go through this lesson, they basically say that this hailstorm, the thunder and all of that was going on with this hailstorm sounded like people wailing, because the people in Egypt were wailing with what was going on. This noise was so great that the people were moaning and groaning. Pharaoh says, "Hey man, just go. Just go." Moshe said to him, verse 29, "As soon as I have gone out of the city, I will spread out my hands to Jehovah. The thunder will end." So them voices and that noise, and there won't be any more hail, so that you can know that the earth belongs to Jehovah. So you thought you were king over all the land. You thought what you said would go. You find out that you have found a force greater than you and all of the deities of this land. He said, "But you and your servants, I know you still won't fear Jehovah, our Elohim." The flax and the barley were ruined. Remember, I said it was about that time of year. So that's why it's believed that that comes in the spring. The first thing to come up in the spring is the flax stalks and the barley. And so when they leave, it's going to be right around that time of year. So it's believed that these things were basically 1 year, all of these plagues taking place, because the barley was ripe and the flax in bud. But the wheat and buckwheat were not ruined because they come later. So that's why it is the wheat that is waved at Shavuot or Pentecost. It's the wheat stalks that are waved, and bread is waved because the wheat has been harvested at that time. But it hasn't come up yet. And so it was not destroyed by this hail, because they come later. Verse 33, Moshe went out of the city away from Pharaoh and spread out his hands to Jehovah. The thunder and the hail ended, and the rain stopped pouring down on the earth. When Pharaoh saw that the rain, hail, and thunder had ended, he sinned still more by making himself hard-hearted. He and his servants. Pharaoh was made hard-hearted, and he didn't let the people of Israel go, just as Jehovah had said through Moshe. So we see that throughout this lesson, we see continual the name of Jehovah. We see the fact that Pharaoh, through these 7 plagues, still was intent on not letting the people of the children of Israel go and worship him. Pharaoh has made some choices in that regard, saying, okay, you could do it here. Moshe said, no, we need to go 3 days journey away. Pharaoh said, no, that's not happening. And so as we end up our lesson on the day, and we'll pick it up in lesson 15 with the last 3 plagues, we will see then that this darkness of Pharaoh's heart is going to demonstrate itself throughout the land of Egypt in the coming plagues. And so let's get back and see, we'll get out of our shared screen and see if we have any more questions, okay? I don't see any more under our chat. So with that, then we have completed our lesson for today, and we made it in a good time. And so if you don't have any other questions, then we will do our priestly blessing and complete our lesson for tonight. Once again, I want to thank you all so much for joining me. We will post it for others. We'll post it tomorrow for others, and they will come and get it. And so we've been doing pretty well, 18, 19 basic people checking us out as we have been going through our lessons. So with that, from the Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 through 26. May Jehovah bless you and keep you. May Jehovah make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Jehovah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And with that, I say, Shalom. I will see you next week for lesson 15 on our journey through 52 lessons through the first 5 books of the Bible. Shalom, everyone.